Yeah. Um, Let me start over. Welcome, everybody. It is good to see everybody here. So glad that you could join us for our book talk. We are truly going to have a lively discussion. We have two wonderful authors, and because we're all quarantined and isolation, this new norm or whatever we're going to call it, they are going to us some things we can so that we're still doing our part, social distancing, being by ourselves, not in crowds, but we can get out and enjoy ourselves. I'll say, Sam, you may want to take a break from some of all that work that you're doing. This will give you some options. Let me introduce our first speaker. He is also an author and a storyteller, and he is our own park ranger at Mason. So that visit this park, you probably know Jonah or have seen him. And Jonah is the first DeKalb County local park director, park ranger, and we are happy that I assigned him to Mason Mill. He's just been wonderful joining us when we were walking and a lot of other projects at the park as well. So Jonah is joining us, as I said, with his books, and he actually has two books. And I will let him talk about those, and I know he's going to kind of infuse the information because they're just wonderful. I have them both. And let me also say that you will have an opportunity to purchase the books if you like. And I'm going to suggest that you go to Jonah's website and he'll provide that information. And he doesn't know I'm about to say this, but maybe you'll even get a signed copy of the book, which I always like to have my author sign my books. So without further ado, Jonah, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Carolyn. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me all right? All right, thanks guys, appreciate that. Yeah, so, I do call myself a park ranger as my, my 9-to-5 job, but my official title is park naturalist. And those of you who've seen me at Mason Mill Park before know that whenever I say, hi, I'm a naturalist, people just assume I run around naked in the woods. And I promise I only do that on weekends. But other than being a park ranger or a naturalist, I've really gotten excited about knowing our city more deeply. And I moved here, almost 20 years ago by foot. I walked from Maine down here to Georgia, all 2,172.4 miles of the Appalachian Trail. And I ended at Springer Mountain. And I know probably a lot of y'all have know Carolyn through walks she leads or things like that. So, Carolyn and I almost immediately connected because of my passion for hiking and exercise, as similar to her. When I got to Atlanta, I had this idea that there was only one way to really understand nature, and that was to go hike to the tallest mountain in the most extreme location, farthest away from town. And I found myself driving 2 to 3 hours just to find a place to experience nature. And I knew there must be a better way. Why do you want to drive that much just to have a couple hours in nature? So I started looking for places closer to home, and I found over 90 green spaces that were just around the corner from my house, everything within a 30-mile drive of downtown. And I thought, well, there's got to be a book about this, and there wasn't. So I thought, well, I guess that means that I'm going to start writing a book. And lo and behold, about 6 years ago, my first book, Hiking Atlanta's Hidden Forest, was published. And it honestly, I guess it was something that the city needed because it's become a real good seller, and it's something that I still feel like is a big gift that I can kind of provide to our city of finding places that we can connect with nature, but not have to spend nearly as much time in our car in order to do that. And Carolyn, I know that's one of the things that you do, because you come to Mason. We met because of Mason Mill Park, which is around the corner from your house and around the corner from my house, but yet it's 150 acres of forest that people can hike, bike, and walk through. So what I want to do today, though, is really talk more about the book that just got published. It's called Secret Atlanta, A Guide to the Weird, Wonderful, and Obscure. And I love things that are wonderful and obscure and also weird. And so what I thought I'd do is give you some suggestions of places that you may have heard of, you may not have heard of, that you might want to explore that would be safe to do during this COVID times that we live in. So I'm going to pull screen share up, show you a couple pictures, because pictures are fun to look at, and then I'll tell you a few stories, and then I'll hand it over to Brittany, because Brittany is also a wealth of knowledge about Atlanta, and you'll be excited to hear from her too. So let me try this screen share thing here and see if I can get it going. There we go. We got a blank screen here. All right. So let's see if I can make it go forward. Is it going forward? Come on, there we are. Yeah, so this is my book. And what I thought I'd do is see there's some unusual pictures on the front. I'm not gonna show you every single one, but I'll try to go through some stories of some of the things that you may have seen in Atlanta, but not know what it was. How many of y'all have taken the train down to the airport? When you're passing the West End MARTA station, you see this tower, this cylindrical tower, quite tall. I think it's 8 stories tall, painted blue and gold. And I've always gone past and wondered, what is that? Or, you can even see it from the mall at the West End. So if I'm over at West End Mall, it's right there too. And when I was researching the book, I found out that this tower is part of what used to be the Amazon warehouse of the early 1900s. Asa Candler, who was the founder of the Coca-Cola Company and a very wealthy man, decided he was going to build the largest warehouse under one roof in the whole United States. And so he did it right in this location. And his idea was cotton farmers from South Georgia could ship their cotton up to Atlanta, where the railroads were, but then store it until the prices were good enough that then they could sell it for a profit. And they had to build this tower, and you see there's administrative offices on the bottom 4 floors, and up top was where they stored water just in case there was a fire. Because you imagine a giant warehouse full of highly flammable cotton, you need some water nearby. And so one of the things I decided to do was try to find these interesting stories about places that we might have seen before, but then also find weird things at famous places. Has anybody seen this right here? So this is called the Corn Cord. So like, the famous supersonic jet, the Concorde? Well, this is the Corn Cord because of corn. And it happens to be part of the airport art exhibit at Hartfield Jackson. When you look closer at this picture, you see you're at the E gate number 16. And the airport, whenever they put out a big expenditure for capital improvements, they have to put aside a little bit of money for art. And they have all this amazing, sometimes weird, sometimes inspiring artwork all around the airport. But we oftentimes don't notice it because we're too busy on our phones trying to get to our gate. So next time you get to the airport a little early, stop by Hartsfield Jackson, go walk the E-gates, and in every single departure gate, there's a different art exhibit. Well, this creature's on the front of my book, and this is Big Lou, the emu. Big Lou lives right around the corner from my house in an unusual green space called the Lake Claire Community Land Trust. And this is a park that was just purchased by a group of neighbors and then turned into a park that is open to the public, but owned by the community. And one of the neighbors has a pet emu, which is a very large, very strange looking bird that you can actually, pet and feed if that's your thing. And I remember when I first published the book and put the picture of the cover on the front, I had about 10 people just send to me a message that said, Big Lou, because they grew up going to this green space and feeding Big Lou the emu. And then here's me contemplating the meaning of life, in front of a strange metal door. This is what's called the Crypt of Civilization. And it is the first ever time capsule created right here in the city of Atlanta at Oglethorpe University. The president of Oglethorpe University got really, really interested in ancient Egypt. And he started thinking about how those pyramids, when they started being opened by European quote unquote explorers and scientists, that they were finding things that were 6,000 years old inside these pyramids. And he said, you know what? I want to create something like that right here in Atlanta. So he built a 12 by 12 room and then filled it up with things from the 1930s, which you can imagine spans the gamut from completely mundane to something that we never see anymore. And there's this huge list of things that he packed into this room and then sealed the door and said, no one can open it for over 6,000 years. And so now in the basement of Phoebe Hearst Memorial Hall at Oglethorpe, there is this steel door and a sign on the front of it that says, this door is not to be opened till year something like, 8,024 or something like that. But again, another thing we don't necessarily think about Atlanta as is, we think of Atlanta as like, the place where the home of the civil rights movement, the birthplace of trap music, something like that. But we don't think of Atlanta as the home of the first time capsule. So after a few of those maybe slightly more unusual things, I want to give you a few places, maybe itineraries of things you could do that that might be fun during these COVID times, and it'd also be something that you can be pretty safe. You can stay a good distance from, because you don't necessarily want to go into Phoebe Hearst Memorial Hall right now. But so here's some things you can do right now. But I got a segue because this is my first book. This is the one of all those hiking trails I was telling you about, right? So of course, you know that I'm a nature guy, I'm a park ranger. I'm gonna have to have some nature things in my book. So the first one I wanna point you to go to is, just like Carolyn and I walk at Mason Mill Park. Well, Carolyn walks there more than me these days, but there is an amazing nature trail that I like to call Atlanta's secret beltline called the Proctor Creek Greenway. It starts at the Bankhead MARTA station and extends over 3 miles kind of to the northwest, past the giant new park called Westside Reservoir Park, which is not quite open, but almost open. And it goes through these beautiful forests right along the banks of Proctor Creek. And if you're looking for a place to go out and walk that's not as crowded as the Beltline, this right here is the place to go. And the thing about Proctor Creek that strikes me so much is that Proctor Creek for a long time was one of the most polluted waterways in the whole city. But because they're starting to put in access to people again, the creek itself is being cleaned up. And now, just the other day, my family went down to the banks of Proctor Creek and dipped our toes in the water. Just like people 70, 80 years ago used to do full immersion baptisms in the water of Proctor Creek. Next is a itinerary that I'm going to suggest to you, but this is a historic picture of it. Some of you might recognize this picture because it was on the front page of newspapers all across the country, and not just across the country, but across the world in 1962. Today, all you can see is this. In 1962, the Payton Forest neighborhood in Southwest Atlanta, there was a medical doctor that moved into the neighborhood. However, the neighborhood was a segregated white neighborhood and the doctor was African American. Well, the white neighbors got so upset about a doctor, a black doctor, moving into their neighborhood that they called up their aldermen, their council people, and also the mayor and said, you have got to put a stop to this. Some of you may even remember this, depending on your age, but the mayor, Ivan Allen Jr., put up a physical barrier between the white community and the black community. It became known as the Payton Road Barrier and the Harland Road Barrier that blocked the Payton Forest neighborhood off for through traffic from the north side, which is where African American folks were living. So this wall, this physical barrier, was such a symbol that it became international news, and newspapers began calling it the Atlanta-Berlin Wall, separating the races. And Ivan Allen eventually, after a huge amount of pressure from activists, had to take down the barrier. This is a story to me that's incredibly arresting because, well, it's today, you'd think that there would be a memorial to this or a historical marker or something like that. But instead, Peyton Forest is still a beautiful middle-class neighborhood. It's a primarily Black neighborhood now, and it's a gorgeous place to live, and there's not a mention of the history. So one of the things that you could possibly do as an itinerary is go visit some of these off the beaten path civil rights spots. So not just the King Center, which is where, you know, where we typically take folks, or the Center for Civil and Human Rights at Centennial Olympic Park, but you can go visit and read the story about the Harland and Peyton Road barriers. You can go to Alonzo Herndon's home, which is an amazing spot in the first place, overlooking the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Alonzo Herndon's son, Norris, was the primary financier of the civil rights movement, and Herndon himself was the founder of Atlanta Life Insurance. You can go take a walking tour to remember a historic Black community in Candler Park. And there's been an organization called the Biracial History Project that's put up a walking tour through that neighborhood. Or go visit Fire Station number 16, which is not as famous as the one in Sweet Auburn, but it's the first fire station where African-American firefighters were stationed in the city of Atlanta. So, and then finally, you can visit right across the street from Morehouse. You can visit a memorial to people who were lynched in Georgia, right in front of the Absalom Jones Center for Racial Healing across the street from Morehouse. And so thinking about those are places that we don't necessarily think about as our cultural heritage of Atlanta necessarily as the first and foremost. We think of like the King birth home, right? But these places have a huge amount of power and importance, but people aren't necessarily telling those stories all the time. So that might be something that could be fun to go and not just see areas of town you may not go to all the time, but also to hear some stories that you haven't heard in a while or you haven't heard enough. All right, so transitioning, let's go back to nature just a hair. And I'm gonna show you another place that I love to go during COVID, and it's to go visit the world's largest collection of ferns. George Senko, who was a professor at GSU Decatur, which is down in Panthersville, used to be called Georgia Perimeter College, had his personal collection planted on the property there, and it's the largest collection of ferns in the country. You can wander around. I call the chapter in my book Jurassic Georgia because it reminds me of, you know, being in Jurassic times. There's all these cool ferns. And then it's right near the Michelle Obama Trail, which is a Path Foundation trail that runs along the banks of the South River. And so what you could do is go visit this super cool, unusual garden, and then take a pleasant walk on the Michelle Obama Trail, which is not nearly as trafficked, again, as a place like the Beltline. And then finally, I'll wrap up with a final itinerary. You notice anything about this picture right here? Down at the bottom of that little column? Yes, there's a tiny door. And if you haven't heard of Tiny Doors ATL, it's an art project that's all over the city. The first one I ever noticed was at the Fox Theater. I was going to a show, and down below the original ticket kiosk, you know, right as you enter there at the front of the Fox, there's a tiny little ticket booth that's on the base of the actual ticket booth. And this artist has been creating tiny doors that reflect the character of the neighborhood that they're placed in. This one is in Grant Park, and if you ever go around Grant Park, you'll see many of the houses have doors like that and street signs that have that little sunburst look to them. Let's see, I think I have a close-up. There it is. And so what you can do is go to Tiny Doors ATL, and there's a map of all these doors, and they're all in places where you can go to safely during COVID and do a little scavenger hunt. And what I love to do with children, but also with adults, is get your mind wandering and start imagining who would live in that door if somebody actually did. And I think that's where I'm going to stop. Carolyn, I want to make sure we have enough time for questions and for Brittany. And let's see. Yeah, we're about at the time frame that you asked me to do. Let's see. I forget what my next slide is. Oh, okay. this is just me going on and on and on. So I could go on to talk about Gaines Hall, the largest tree in Atlanta, this very unusual thing called Druid Hill. Let's see. Oh, the Wrens Nest. An interesting historical plaque.
Jonah,
You've seen that one.
It's interesting. I'm sure people will hang in there, but we have enough time.
No, I'm good. So I'll tell you guys that there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can check out in Atlanta that may not be on the front of your radar screen, but if you dig a little deeper, you can always find interesting places that are also really safe to go. You know, of course, we always want to wear a mask when we're out and about, but these are the kind of places where you're not going to see nearly as many people, which is important in these times. And so yeah, I'll stop there. We'll have we can do some questions. I did hear one question on the chat though. So somebody asked, how long did it take me to hike the Appalachian Trail? It took 177 days.
And also, I see one comment person said, I'm a native and I didn't know that. So you've really introduced a lot of new things to people.
Yeah,
and,
I know. I'm going through those things real fast.
After birthday. So thank you, Jonah. Thank you, our naturalist park ranger. And I also wanted to mention, did you know that Senko passed? He just passed in 2018. Yeah. So,
I never got to meet him. Did you, Carolyn?
No, I did not.
Yeah.
But yeah, he just passed recently. And also the Michelle Obama Trail was just named recently as well. So that was something I didn't know about. And I thought I knew a lot of stuff. I see that actual walking trail by the Path Foundation is 3.8 miles, even though the overall trail is a little longer than that. So thank you, Jonah. Brittany, are you ready?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, next is Brittany, and Brittany is a native Georgian. She is one of those original peaches of Georgia, and she is going to tell us about some more very fun and unique things that we can do right here in the greater Atlanta area. The name of her book is, and I thought I had it right here, 100 Things You Want to Do Before You Die in Greater Atlanta. So okay. Without further ado, that may not be the exact name, but she'll correct me. And I heard her talk about some of the things before, and it's really, really interesting. So Brittany, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, so I just published my first book. It's 100 Things to Do in Atlanta Before You Die, and it's the 3rd edition. I like to tell people, you know, it doesn't matter whether you've been in Atlanta your whole life or you're a transplant or you're just visiting. It's a perfect book for everybody. You know, of course, I've included all the Atlanta staples in there that, you know, all the travelers need to check out. But I'm also a journalist for the Southeast, and I, you know, spend a lot of my time researching, you know, things that people don't necessarily know about in the city. So a lot of, you know, some of those hidden gems are included in my book as well. So I'll go ahead and share my screen so we can talk about, you know, some things and social distancing safe activities that we can do in Atlanta. So let's share this really quick. Okay. Okay, so this is the cover of my book, and you guys can purchase this from my website. It's 100thingsatl.com. So this right here is called Westview Cemetery, and this is actually the mausoleum at the cemetery. I'm sure Jonah is familiar with this, but it's actually the largest civilian cemetery in the Southeast. And there's actually over 11,000 tombs right in this mausoleum right here. And it's just absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it really looks like, you know, Gothic style architecture that you would see in Europe. and it's just right in your backyard. It's right off Westview Drive in Atlanta. And you know, the actual cemetery is 582 acres. It's massive. So, you know, I like to say that most things outdoors are always open, pandemic or not. And this, you know, this is a good place to go out and explore. And you actually can still visit the mausoleum. And all the information's on their website, but you would have to make an appointment ahead of time if you wanted to go check out the mausoleum. And they also have an abbey and a chapel to explore as well. So that's a really awesome hidden gem. I know one of the staples in Atlanta is Oakland Cemetery, which is absolutely gorgeous, but I think that one's a little bit more popular than Westview. It's kind of overlooked a little bit, I would say. So this is definitely a really cool little European type adventure that you can take right in the city. So next is actually historic Banning Mills. And that's, you know, not in Atlanta, it's actually in Whitesburg, Georgia, but it is, that's not me, by the way. I still have yet to go zip line there, but it's actually the largest zip line canopy tour in the entire world. They have over 100 zip line courses, and there's tons of different, you know, packages that you can buy. You can spend the whole day there just doing all the things that they have. You can reach up to 75 miles per hour on these zip lines. So if you are an outdoor adventurer and you know, you're looking for that adrenaline rush because you've been bored at home for so long, then this is definitely a good place to go. And they also have, you know, since it is about an hour outside of Atlanta, they have, you know, cabins and things. So you can spend the whole weekend kind of glamping there in the cabins, and they've got just countless things to do. They actually have the largest, it's actually in the Guinness World Records. It's the largest climbing wall in the entire world. So it's definitely a fun place to go if you're looking for some adrenaline rush. And these are just some of my favorite hiking spots. Like I said, the outdoors is always open. And these are in different spots throughout the Atlanta area and, you know, a little bit outside the perimeter as well. So the first one on the upper left, that is Cascade Springs. And that's a really awesome spot. It has a lot of history. It actually dates back to the Civil War. The Battle of Utoy Creek was actually fought on this property, and the earthworks are still there. So it's really cool to kind of travel back in time to the Civil War era. And as you can see, there's this gorgeous waterfall, and there's also a tunnel that's really cool. You can explore that as well. And over here on the right, the upper right, is Indian Seeds. And this is actually a place I used to go to in high school. I grew up north of Atlanta in the Alpharetta area. And so this is actually in Cumming, Georgia on Sawney Mountain. It's just about 30 minutes outside of the city. And it's called Indian Seeds. It's actually believed that way back in the day, you know, Cherokee Indians would use the clearing atop these mountains for ceremonial purposes. And it's just a gorgeous view of the North Georgia mountains. If you've ever been hiking in North Georgia, it's just absolutely gorgeous. So this one's, you know, it's a moderate hike. It's about 4 miles round trip. So it's not bad. And you just get this gorgeous view of the North Georgia mountains. So that's definitely a fun place to go. And then this here is the falls at Roswell Mill. This is on Vickery Creek Trail. And depending on where you're coming from on the trail, you really don't have to hike far to get to it. There is, you know, the way that I went, I kind of descended on it's a pretty steep hill, but it's really, there's no hiking involved. So if you kind of want to go to, you know, explore nature without, you know, getting into a strenuous activity, then this is a good place to go. You can swim. It's a good place to have a picnic. And yeah, it's really great. So that one's in Roswell. This here is, that's actually me. It's at what they call the edge of the world. And it's a part of Amicalola Falls. You know, that place is huge. So there's lots of exploring to do there. But this is actually kind of a secret spot at Amicalola Falls called the Edge of the World. And if you can kind of see, it just looks like there's just a drop at this fall that's right in front of me. And it kind of looks like it just drops off of the edge of the world. And it's just really fun. You can swim. It's gorgeous. And the best way to find it is to actually, you can call the visitor center and just say, hey, can you tell me where to park for the edge of the world? Because it is kind of tricky to find, but they're pretty good at guiding you to get there. And a hike's not really involved for this one either. You kind of just walk on the flat land, and it's there's a boardwalk to get to it. So those are just some of my favorite spots to enjoy the outdoors, because I know a lot of people have been doing stuff like that nowadays, because that's really all we have to do. So let's see. Oops. Okay, so this is another classic. This is the Starlight Drive-In Theater. It's actually the last standing drive-in movie theater in the city. So this is kind of another time travel adventure back to the 80s, or, you know, that retro movie style experience. So, you know, this has always been a good place to social distance, because you're just in the comfort of your own car, and they're still playing movies daily and nightly here. So if you just check out their website, they have all their show times up, and it's just like a huge screen. And I would recommend bringing your own FM transmitter, just so, you know, or a speaker, just so your battery doesn't die in your car, because that can happen. But yeah, that's a really fun place to go, completely COVID friendly. And then I wanted to talk a bit about our restaurants here. We have some really great dining in Atlanta, and that's my favorite thing to talk about. That was my favorite part of the book to write about, is all the awesome food we have here. And I did want to talk about some of our Black-owned restaurants, because, I mean, their food's just absolutely amazing at these places. So this one's called Big Dave's Cheesesteaks. And if you want to feel like you're in Philadelphia, I know we have Irene on here. She's from Philadelphia, so she might have to come to Atlanta and see if it lives up to its expectations. But in my opinion, it's absolutely amazing. I mean, I've never actually been to Philly, but the owner is from Philadelphia. He's from West Philadelphia, so he knows how to cook up a Philly. They've got the cheese whiz and everything, and they actually started. They were off Winters Chapel Road, attached to a Chevron gas station, so it's kind of like a hole in the wall. And most of the time, those holes in the wall have the best food, and it's definitely true in this case. But he was so popular. I remember the first time I went, I had to wait in line for almost an hour. The line was just almost outside the parking lot, because it's just so popular. And so he said, you know, this isn't a big enough space for me and the demand that I'm having to meet. So he, you know, is expanding. He has a huge, huge space now off Forsyth Street. And then there's one opening up in Doraville as well. And then here on the right, you can see that those are the Philly cheesesteak egg rolls, and they are absolutely to die for. So if you're wanting a taste of Philly, I would definitely check out Big Dave's Cheesesteaks. And then next we have on the left, that's a burger from Slutty Vegan. That is one of the most popular vegan spots in Atlanta. The owner, Pinky Cole, is so awesome. She's just a boss lady. She's really killing it right now. She's expanding her restaurants as well, and she's had lots of lines out the door for her burgers too, because you just won't even believe they're vegan. I mean, they're completely plant-based burgers. All the toppings are plant-based. There's plant-based shrimp burgers, there's plant-based bacon, and it's just, you won't believe it's vegan. It's amazing. And they're doing Slutty Vegan and Big Dave's are both open for takeout. So just call ahead and you can pick it up curbside, and they're open for business. And then, so here are these delicious donuts that look so good right now. This is from Sublime Donuts, and another awesome owner, his name's Kamal, and he's so great. He's really creative too. I mean, these are the best donuts in Atlanta, and I think even John Mayer, a long time ago, when he was here touring for his concert, he went to Sublime, and I think tweeted about it because it was so good. But they have some really, really awesome donuts. And if you go in and you ask them what they have on their secret menu, they have some really creative things that, just limited time seasonal type donuts. I think right now, or maybe last month, they had like a watermelon lime feta donut. And in previous years, they've had even a chicken and waffles donut. So they have some really, really creative, unique concoctions that you cannot find anywhere else. And this place is open for takeout as well. It's definitely one of my favorites. So yeah, I hope that covers it. You know, we've got the outdoor stuff. We've got some good restaurants that, you know, COVID friendly. You just bring it home and eat it. And that's kind of what we have so far.
Thank you so much, Brittany. I've been to Slutty Vegan. I wasn't crazy about the name, but the food is delicious. You're absolutely right about that.
It is.
And let me say, I know I mentioned that we had a lot of different groups on here, a lot of my meetup groups, people that get my newsletter. We have a lot of hikers with us today, as well as my Just Walk people who were walking Mason Mill with me. And we have hiked actually some of the places that you mentioned, particularly Colola, and also, in addition, some of us have gone up to the Hike In, which is the only way there. It's about a 5-mile hike up further in the mountains is to hike. And that's a wonderful place to visit as well. And we really, really thank you for that and sharing it with us. There are people with a few questions, and if you will, we'll just do one at a time. I'm not sure how to do this. I was going to ask you to raise your hand, but unmute yourself and I will call. If you want to speak, we'll do it. If you want to speak, unmute yourself and then let me call on you before you speak. But please make sure that you do not have any background noise. So if you want to have a question or make a comment, please unmute yourself and I will call on you. Don't everybody speak at once.
Hey, Carolyn, it's Christina. I have a question.
Yes, please.
Do you have, can Jonah give us his website for his books, please?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to secretatlanta.com. And if you, and guys, I don't know, Carolyn, if I shared this with you, but whenever I do talks, I like to give my new friends, I'm not Amazon, right? I can't do free shipping, but I can give you all a discount on shipping. So if you type in 3SHIP, SHIP, as a promo code on my website, then it'll discount the shipping down to almost nothing. So if y'all get the books from my website, then you use that code so I can send it to you for a little cheaper.
Okay, and Brittany, yours is 100thingsatl.com, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think both of the books are really, really so interesting, so much to do and so close. Jonah, talk about the, what is it, the crypt that's right in Decatur. I went looking for it, not really looking, but it's in the middle of a parking lot or something.
Yeah. So this is one that I had a really fun story with. There's something called the Crowley Mausoleum, and it's behind a Napa Auto Parts store, between a Walmart parking lot and a Napa Auto Parts, just in a parking lot. But it's a 20-foot raised cemetery, and so the Crowley family owned the land. It was a farm. And they just, farmers would just bury their folks in a plot on their land. And so when farming stopped being quite so much a thing in DeKalb County, they started selling off the land, but with the stipulation that their family cemetery would stay intact. Well, this is the location. Y'all might remember the Columbia Mall, which then became the Avondale Mall. And now it's the Walmart right over at Columbia and I think Glenwood. And so it's that location. So when they leveled the land to make a parking lot, this was hills, and people would usually bury their people on top of hills. So the cemetery was on a hill, and so when they leveled the ground to make the parking lot, they had to leave the cemetery at the level that it was. So they just built a stone wall around it. And now you will go through this parking lot and there's this raised 20-foot tall stone thing, and there's a staircase that leads up it, but it's locked. And I knew I wouldn't be able to make it up there. So I was considering sending a drone up to the top to take pictures when I saw a Post-it note on the lock that said, for Crowley family members, call this number. So I called the number and I said, I'm not a Crowley family member, but I'm writing a book that I'm including your family's gravesite. And the woman who answered said, oh yeah, here's the code. Just go up to the top of it. Now don't give anybody the code, but just go up to the top of it. And she gave me her mother's phone number, and I got to talk to her mom all about their family history as a result of it. And it was just this really fun connection. And what I found is most of the families moved away, you know, as happens, and the whole top of the cemetery is just completely overgrown with weeds. And so I told the family that that this fall I'm going to go up there and I'm going to clear it all out of weeds for them, just as like a little thank you for letting me see this site. But it's this, I mean, it's a strange thing that there'd be a cemetery in a Walmart parking lot in the first place.
I thought that was interesting, and I believe when he willed the land or something, he said that it was in perpetuity. So that's why they could sell everything around it, but they couldn't sell that one little piece.
And you know, that happens a lot. There's a couple other cemeteries that are listed that I included in my book, including two tiny ones that are tucked around the airport runways. So there's a small airport called the Flat Rock Airport and another one called the Hart Cemetery, the Flat Rock Cemetery and the Hart Cemetery, that they had to build the runways around the cemeteries. And so now you have these roads built directly to this one cemetery, completely surrounded on all sides by airport runways. Or another example is in Buckhead. If you've ever played baseball or watched a baseball game at Frankie Allen Park in Buckhead, that location was known as Macedonia Park, and it was the historic African-American neighborhood of Buckhead. And of course, we know from the history of our city, racism, segregation, and Jim Crow, many African-American neighborhoods were destroyed by city council decree. And Macedonia Park was one of those that was declared a slum and then raised, flattened, in order to build a park for white people. But there was a cemetery there. And the only thing that's still surviving is the Mount Olive Cemetery. And it's still there in Frankie Allen Park. So you can go visit that and see a cemetery that has, you know, very, very old gravestones. But the biggest thing is trying to remember that story of the things we used to do in Atlanta to communities. And if we don't watch out for it, we'll find that stuff still happening today.
Thank you, Jonah. Jason, did you have a comment or question?
Yes, I did. I wanted to know, I know Brittany had said something about a place called Colola Falls. Where is that located? I mean, I've heard of that place before.
Yeah, so it's actually, it's a little bit further out from Atlanta. Let me tell you exactly where it is. I know it's in North Georgia in the Dahlonega area. So it's like 45 minutes north of here. And it's so huge. I mean, there's different places up in North Georgia to access it. But yeah, it's near Dahlonega if you're familiar with that area.
Yeah, I used to go there a long time ago to camp called Camp Glsen, and
Okay.
It was in Dahlonega. We took Highway 400, Highway 19.
Yeah, 400 takes you right there.
Okay, so I just want to be sure. Okay.
And Jason, if you join my newsletter, our hiking group, we've hiked Amicalola Falls several times. So
oh, yeah.
Most of our hikes are in North Georgia. However, during COVID, I'm staying a little closer to Atlanta and we're not taking as many people. But for anybody that wants to find out about our hikes, because I don't always post them on the meetup groups, you can go to my website and sign up for the newsletter. And my website is simply my name, carolynhartfield.com. And you can see a lot of the things that we do. So, and I want to ask Teresa Hall, I'm about to Teresa, what do you think about banning mills and that 75 miles an hour zip line?
All I can say is, wee! That's what I usually say when I'm on the zip line. Looks interesting.
I called Teresa out because she planned one of our first zip line trips, and that was a long time ago, a number of years ago, and that's why I called her out on that. And for this year, we obviously had to cancel all of our trips. Some others are coming. Anybody else have any comments? Brittany, tell us how.
Carolyn, it's Christine. I wanted to mention something if I can.
Yes, you can.
Quite by accident the other day, I found a little beach at Lake Lanier. It's not Ocean Beach, but I was so excited to find this beach in the middle of the week with no one on it. It's called Old Federal Day Use Beach, and it's free to the public. And you can bring your cooler. And I think when we went there were 8 people on this beach, and it was just phenomenal. Let's not forget there's stuff in Lake Lanier that you can find, these little tucked away beaches.
Jonah, is that something I'm sure you're familiar with?
Yeah, I've been to that one too, and it's a great idea. I'm glad you mentioned that, Christine, because I mean, it's so hot, right? We're all looking for ways to cool ourselves off. The place that Brittany was talking about, Edge of the World, is one of my favorite places to take a dip in a river because it is so easily accessible and it's fully swimmable. But the other beach that is not open right now that my family goes to all the time is at Pine Lake, which is this tiny little city in DeKalb County. And they have their own lake there with a sandy beach and everything. But unfortunately, during COVID, the city's closed their beach. So it's a good reminder that up at Lake Lanier, there's some beaches. And I like the Lake Lanier beaches better because there's a beach at John Tanner State Park, which is near Carrollton or near Villa Rica. And there's out at Hard Labor Creek State Park. There's also a really nice sandy beach. But you know, that gets to be almost a little bit more like South Georgia style, where the water gets real murky and a little bit warm in the summertime. But Lake Lanier is always nice and cool. I bet that was beautiful.
And it was quite an unexpected find.
Yeah, that's really nice. Y'all should definitely check that out.
Lake Lanier too has Mary Alice Beach Park, which is a really awesome place. It really feels like you're on the ocean and at the beach on the ocean. And I'm actually not sure if that's open right now, but that's definitely a fun place to go.
What is it called, Brittany?
Mary Alice Park Beach.
Mary Alice, okay.
Yeah. Joan, I have a question. Pine Lake, is that near or part of Pine Mountain? I know we've hiked there.
Yeah, it's not. Pine Lake is off Rockbridge Road here in DeKalb County. Well, I'm in DeKalb County. Y'all may not all be in DeKalb. But yeah, so just off Rockbridge Road in DeKalb County, just outside the perimeter. And it's the smallest town in DeKalb. I think it's something like 400 people. It's very small. But they have a lake with a beach house, a volleyball court, and it's all open to the public. So, I mean, it's made by their city, but it's open to everybody, except right now. So once that, you know, next summer, hopefully we'll all be back to normal by next summer, I hope. It's super close. I mean, I had spent 20 years in Atlanta, and then last year I went there for the first time, and I thought, what? There's a beach that's a 10-minute drive from my house? What? And I went there like 8 times last summer, and then of course haven't been able to this summer. But Lake Lanier is a great one. If you live in the North Metro, it's easy to get to. Like where I'm from, it takes an hour to get there, but still an hour to go to the beach, better than going to Savannah, right?
Brittany, there is a question. How many areas is a cemetery? Now, I think I saw that in the mausoleum anyway, they have at least 1,000. That's how large it is. They have 1,000.
Well, the cemetery itself is 582 acres, That's a good question. I'm not sure how many grave sites they have in there, but there are 11,000 tombs in the mausoleum itself. And Asa Griggs Candler is actually buried, the founder of Coca-Cola, he's actually buried at the cemetery as well. And they actually, this is just another fun fact, they host Halloween parties at the mausoleum every year. So if all goes well, maybe they'll have it this year, I'm not sure, but I've heard that those are a lot of fun.
Donna, did you have a question? I see you're unmuted.
No, I just had a comment. Thanks for talking about not Lake Lanier, Pine Lake, because I travel through there often. I mean, like at least 2 or 3 times a week, and I never knew there was a beach there. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Very good. And that was the whole purpose of, you know, of us even having this, because there are a lot of little gems around that we can do. Did Neil just get off? Neil, are you still on?
Yes, I'm still here. Thank you.
Okay, good.
No, great show.
Okay. Were there any other questions before I ask Neil? I see Jason, you're unmuted. Did you have another comment?
Oh no, I'm just listening. Just listening.
Okay. Well, Teresa Hall has really inspired me, and we've been doing these virtual meetings about every other week to give people something to do. And on Friday night, she's been hosting various types of trivia. So I'm putting this out there. I guess you'll come up with another one soon. But on even if we repeat them, because going out on a Friday night, for those of us that are home single, that's what we do. You know, we get online. Okay, Chris, I see you shaking your head. But what I would like to say, in 2 weeks, we're going to host Neil, and along with Brenda Coleman from Atlanta Cares. Atlanta Cares is a part of the National Cares movement, which was started by Susan Taylor, the editor emeritus with Essence Magazine. And hers is a national mentoring movement. And we have our own Atlanta chapter here. And so if you're looking for something to do to kind of help someone as a mentor or as a coach, Atlanta Cares has partnered with Partners in Change, sorry. And they have what they're calling the Parents University. Neil, would you like to say something about that? And so we can get some interest in that as well. And that's for August 23rd.
Yes, University for Parents is a terrific organization providing a wonderful opportunity for adults who haven't had the benefit of a lot of education in their lives. And so Brenda enrolls people. It's a 4-credit course, 15 weeks. They have 7 offerings, and they run for 15 weeks, and then they run again. A person can take one course at 2 hours, and they will provide food, they will provide transportation, and also daycare if a person has children that they can't get help for. But they are on, of course, now they're online doing a terrific job. So Partners for Change, the organization that I represent, is hooking up with University for Parents to provide a more intense, once a week, 30 to 45 minute coaching opportunity for all of those parents. They call them parent learners in University for Parents. So if anybody on this call or on this Zoom meeting would like to be trained as a coach, as an opportunity coach, Partners in Change provides that training. And we'll talk more about that when we, in 2 weeks. But the organization that Susan Taylor has created is remarkably important. And then in Atlanta, we have the only University for Parents chapter. So in the United States, Susan Taylor has 53 locations around the United States where there are Detroit CARES, we have Atlanta CARES Mentoring Movement, Detroit CARES Mentoring Movement, Houston CARES Mentoring Movement, but the only place in the United States that has the University for Parents program. Susan and Brenda are piloting that in Atlanta. It's quite an extraordinary organization, and we're thankful to be a part of it.
Thank you, Neil. And I'll be sending information out on that as well. That's to give you something else to do. I know we have people here that have a wealth of knowledge and expertise, and to reach out and help someone, you know, that's an opportunity to do that. And September is National Healthy Aging Month. And that's the month of my birthday too. Woo. But in September, I will be hosting the Amazing Aging Trilogy. And that's no matter what age you are, there are certain things you can do to just have an amazing aging experience. So that will be coming. And I'm also hosting a weekly Tai Chi class for those of you that are interested. So I will be posting those things. And thank you, Jonah, for sending out your website. Brittany, if you would list your website as well, so if people want to come to it, they know where to come. And I am going to put my work on here so that people, if you want to come. And does anybody have any announcements they would like to make? You know, we're here to share, and this is a great opportunity. We have quite a few people here. I'm so happy to see so many people.
I think Carolyn might have cut out for a sec. Is that right?
Yeah, I think our
She's
internet
frozen.
may have-
Hey, Jonah, let me ask you a question. How many acres is that cemetery by Walmart out there on off Memorial?
It's like 30 feet by 30 feet. I have a picture of it. I'll show you guys. Let's see.
Is it an acre or more?
No. It's this. Can you see
Oh,
my
that's
screen
it.
here? That's it. So it's a very unusual thing, but as I said, it's like 30 feet by 30 feet, maybe 40 feet by 40 feet. And you see it's about 20 feet tall. This is up top. You see how I told you it was so overgrown with weeds and stuff. But yeah, it's not a big cemetery at all. It's a tiny little thing.
Huh, thank you.
Yeah, totally.
Fascinating. Had no idea.
Yeah, well, I had been driving past that for a while, and I knew it was something interesting. But you know, sometimes when you get to be called an author, Brittany, you know this. When you get to be called an author, you can ask questions that you couldn't necessarily ask when you were just a person, you know, just like a normal person.
Yours is a prime example.
Well, y'all, I think that since Carolyn lost her internet connection, I think we were about wrapping up. For me, I really appreciate getting to share some of this with you. I feel like every time I think a little bit more about our city, and I get into things that I didn't know about before, it gives me just a little bit more love of the city. So I think I hope what you come away from this with is a little bit more depth of understanding of the town that we call home, and some ideas of where to go for dinner tonight, right, Brittany?
Absolutely.
I know, I got so hungry looking at those pictures of food.
Yeah, they're mouth-watering.
Brittany, I'm a foodie as well, so thank you. I will definitely get your book.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I love food, that's for sure.
Well, y'all be well, and hopefully we'll get to see all you guys in person sometime. Anytime you're at Mason Mill Park, that's my park ranger duties. So wave at me and say, Ranger Jonah, I saw you on Zoom, and then we can actually see each other in person.
right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Jonah,
All right, y'all.
Brittany,
Bye-bye.
very,
Thank you,
very
guys.
interesting and very
Bye-bye.
informative. So
Bye.
thank you, thank you, thank you.
Be safe.